Welcome to The Explainer. If you're prepping for the Queensland bar, you know that pleadings are everything. Today, we're going to master a rule that's at the absolute core of fair litigation, UCPR Rule 150. You've got to know this one inside and out.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll talk about the fundamental problem Rule 150 is designed to solve. Then we'll walk through its key checklist. We'll spotlight the really critical stuff you'll see on the exam, like fraud and damages. Then we'll get into the nuance of pleading inferences. And finally, we'll flip the script and look at the other side's obligations. All right, let's start with the big picture. Before we get into the weeds of the rule, what is this whole process even for? What are we trying to prevent? Every rule in the UCPR is there to make sure there's a fair fight, but Rule 150, specifically, is aimed squarely at defeating one single enemy of justice. What do you think it is? That's it. Surprise. The whole system is designed to stop one party from getting ambushed at trial with an argument they never saw coming. This isn't just a nice idea, it is the absolute bedrock of fairness in our system. Keep this concept, no surprises, in your head, because it explains everything about Rule 150.
Okay, so if surprise is the enemy, what's our weapon against it? Well, it's Rule 150, and the main ammunition is the mandatory checklist you will find in Rule 150, Subrule 1.
This right here is your master list. Getting this wrong is such a classic exam trap, and in the real world, it's a pleading disaster waiting to happen. Notice a theme here? A lot of these, duress, estoppel, fraud, they go to the very heart of whether a deal or a transaction was valid in the first place. The courts are saying, if you're going to make a serious allegation like fraud, under Rule 151F, you have to put it on the table clearly from day one. Now, this next group deals more with a person's state of mind and the consequences of their actions. I want you to pay really close attention to two of these because they are absolute minefields in practice. Paragraph B, which is about every type of damage, and Paragraph K, which covers things like motive and intention. We're going to dive deep into those right now. Let's zoom in on those high-stakes items. Two of the most critical and honestly most frequently litigated parts of Rule 150 are damages and fraud. If you get these wrong, your case can run into serious trouble before it even gets started. Let's start with damages. Rule 150's Subrule 1, Paragraph B is completely uncompromising on this. It is not enough to just say you're claiming damages. You have to specify every single type you're after, whether that's special damages for specific monetary losses or even exemplary damages meant to punish the other side. And if you think you can just write a little IOU in your pleading like this, think again. The Court of Appeal in Meredith v. Pomcam slammed the door on this. They made it crystal clear. You cannot kick the can down the road. The particulars, the details, they have to be in the body of the statement of claim itself, period. Okay, now for the big one, fraud. This is governed by Rule 150, Subrule 1, Paragraph F. This is one of the most serious allegations you can make in a civil case, and you better believe the rules are applied with extreme rigor. This quote from Justice Jackson in Mio Art really gets to the heart of it. A vague claim of fraud is not just bad pleading, it's oppressive, it's unfair. The defendant has a right to know precisely what you're accusing them of so they can prepare a defense. So how do you do it correctly? First, you have to plead the specific facts that actually make up the fraud. Just using the word fraud means nothing on its own. Second, you have to cover every single element of that cause of action. The whole point is to leave your opponent in absolutely zero doubt about the exact case they have to answer. Now, this brings us to a really crucial point, a nuance that separates a good pleading from a great one, and that is Rule 150, Subrule 2. This rule was a big change from the old court rules, and you have to understand it. So here's the key takeaway for this subrule. If you are alleging something from that checklist in Subrule 1, like knowledge or intention, and you're asking the court to infer it from the circumstances, you must also plead the primary facts that you'll be relying on to ask the court to draw that inference.
As Justice Bauskill put it so well in Quinlan, you have to spell it out. You can't just throw a bunch of facts at the wall and leave it to the other side to guess which ones you think support your inference of, say, malice. You have to explicitly connect the dots for them in the pleading itself.
And look, this slide illustrates the difference perfectly. On the left, you have this bald assertion. The defendant knew. That's just not good enough anymore. That's a fail. On the right, that's how you do it properly under Rule 150, Subrule 2. You state the inference, knowledge, and then you list the primary facts you'll use to prove it. That's a professional pleading. Now, it's really important to remember that these principles of clarity and avoiding surprise are not a one-way street. They don't just apply to plaintiffs. So let's quickly look at the obligations on the defendant.
Rule 150, Subrule 4, basically mirrors that core philosophy we talked about. And just look at 154C. If your defense is something that might take the plaintiff by surprise, guess what? You have to specifically plead it. It's the other side of the exact same coin.
And finally, just a quick note. For simple debt claims, Rule 150 Subrule 3 has its own little checklist. This is all about making sure the defendant knows exactly what's being claimed and how they can resolve the whole thing efficiently without racking up more costs.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Rule 150 isn't just a list of technicalities to memorize. It is the UCPR's primary weapon against trial by ambush. It demands clarity, it demands detail, and it demands fairness from everybody involved.
Before you file any pleading, from now on, I want you to ask yourself this. Is it compliant? Have I left any room for the other side to claim they're surprised? Mastering Rule 150, especially Subrules 1, 2, and 4, is a fundamental skill for any barrister. That's our explainer for today.